So Kitchen Tech, all things Italy. Welcome to tonight's program. My name is Susan McBride. I am co-presenting tonight with Mike Edding, my partner in crime. And we are eager to delve into all of the kitchen tech that you're going to need if you're interested in making some authentic Italian food at home. So perhaps you haven't been able to enjoy your favorite Italian dinner recently due to COVID, or perhaps you find yourself drooling while you're watching Stanley Tucci on CNN's Searching for Italy series. Maybe you had plans to go to Italy and those plans have been put on the back burner for now. Whatever your reason, if you love Italian food and you're interested in knowing more about making it at home, then you've come to the right place. Tonight, Mike and I will be highlighting the kitchen tech that you're going to need if you are interested in replicating authentic Italian food in your home kitchen. So tonight we're going to cover all the bases. We're going to start with making pizza and then move into pasta, gelato, coffee, and then last, any gadgets that might come in handy as you're preparing your Italian food. So let's start with pizza. So to make really truly authentic Italian pizzas at home, there are three essential pieces of kitchen tech that you're going to need. The first is a hot oven, and by that I mean a blazing hot oven. You want upwards of 900 degrees if possible. So that's just what helps make the characteristic crust and the pizzas that you would get if you were actually in Italy. With an oven that hot, you also need a good pizza peel, which is the flat tray that you slide the pizza into the oven with. You need that so that you can easily transfer your pizza in and out of the oven when it's that hot. And then lastly, you're going to want a really sharp cutter so that you can easily cut and enjoy the pizza while it is still hot. So I'm going to move into all of these individually. Let's start with the hot oven requirement. So the oven that you cook your pizza in is going to be key in terms of what kind of results you're going to get. In Italy, pizza is characterized by a thin crust that is crispy on the outside, but still has a good chew and a slight char in it. It gets its characteristics because in Italy, they cook their pizzas in a wood-burning oven. And typically those ovens are able to reach much higher temperatures than our home ovens would. Like in Italy, they're in excess of like 1,000 degrees, so it's pretty hot. So clearly you can't do that in your home oven. The best that we can hope for is probably about 550 degrees, unless you have a really high-end stove, and even then it's not going to get up that hot. In addition to the temperature, the way that the heat is distributed in a wood-burning oven is also what helps to create that incredible crust and a really good Italian pizza. So wood-fired ovens typically have some kind of ceramic or tile floor where the heat is conducted and it creates that really crisp crust. Then the heat flows over the pizza and radiates from the top to create a nice, melted cheese and a heated top as well. Typically, pizzas in a wood-fired oven will cook in about 60 seconds to 90 seconds, so it's an incredibly fast process. So for home chefs wanting to make pizza like Italians, you can use an outdoor pizza oven, which I will get into in a minute. You can retrofit your outdoor grill, whether it be just a Weber charcoal grill or a gas grill, and then you can replicate a pizza oven to some extent in your grill. Or you can use your indoor oven, but use a pizza stone or a pizza steel that you cook your pizza on inside the oven that will help give it a better crust than just cooking it on a cookie sheet or straight on the oven itself, on the grate itself in the oven. So let's talk about outdoor pizza ovens to start. So probably the best way to replicate a true authentic Italian pizza would be to use an outdoor pizza oven. And there are a couple of things that you want to keep in mind when you're looking at these pizza ovens. There are different ways that they can be heated. They could be, some of them will use wood, hardwood, or wood chips. Some will use charcoal, and others will be retrofitted or will actually be set up to just use gas, like your gas grill would be, or a propane tank, or something like that. In terms of pizza, wood is the ideal fuel for your pizza oven, and that is because it's going to give you a really nice flavor to the pizza that charcoal and gas aren't going to impart. They're not going to give that same wood-fired flavor. However, the problem with wood is that it can be fussy. It's a little harder to burn. It can burn faster. You do want to make sure you're using a hardwood so it doesn't burn quite so fast. But it will need to be replenished periodically as you're cooking your pizzas, depending on the wood stove or the pizza stove that you're using. Charcoal is another good option. It burns a little bit longer than wood, and you don't have to babysit it quite as much. You don't get the wood-fired flavor. You can combine in some of these pizza ovens that I'm going to discuss in a minute. You can combine both charcoal and wood, so you get the best of both worlds. The charcoal will keep the fire going and keep it hot. The wood will give it that wood-fired flavor. And then lastly, you can also use gas, as I mentioned before. And the thing about gas is that it's really easy. You ignite it and it's going, and it's heats the oven up pretty quickly. So there are benefits and drawbacks to all of the different fuels. So you have to decide what you want based upon, you know, what you're interested in ending up with. Another aspect that's important to consider with the pizza oven is actually how it's designed. The pizza oven, you want the air needs to flow in and heat the ceramic stone, but then you want the flow of the air to go over the top of the dome of the pizza oven and then head up out some kind of chimney near the front of the pizza oven. The goal is to have that hot surface that is either stone or ceramic to create the crust, and then get the heat on the top of the pizza as well to cook the top of the pizza.
You can skip this step. You can just
in some of these pizza ovens, the fire will actually dance along the top of the oven. So it really gets the top of the oven hot.
It's risotto.
Whether you're going to build a permanent pizza oven or buy a more portable one, you want to make sure that it has these design features. Another consideration is the size of the oven, especially when buying a more portable oven. Smaller pizza ovens are fine for a family. You don't need a larger oven that can cook like 16-inch pizzas because the pizzas cook so fast. They cook in 60 to 90 seconds. So you can really burn through a lot of pizzas pretty quickly for your family. The other benefit of a smaller oven is that it will burn less fuel. So you won't go through as much wood or as much charcoal as quickly. Smaller ovens are also more portable, so you can take them with you. They're more versatile. And then the last consideration that you want to think about is how much you want to spend. So the smaller ovens the more portable, smaller pizza ovens start at about $300. And then you can go up from there to thousands of dollars for a more permanent wood-fired oven. So I want to show you in the slide here, I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but this first pizza oven that's in the upper right-hand corner is a pizza oven by Uni, and that's spelled O-O-N-I. Uni is a very reliable, highly rated manufacturer of pizza ovens, and they make a range of what are considered to be more portable pizza ovens. This particular one is the Uni Coda, which is fired, it's a gas-fired grill. So it doesn't have a chimney, as you can see, so you don't burn wood or charcoal with it. You hook it up to a propane tank and you can really take it anywhere. I want you to notice how small it is and the size of the opening. And that's important to keep in mind with these pizza ovens. They really just fit a pizza and barely. And that's to really keep the heat condensed so that they can cook that pizza really fast to get the results that are, similar to a bigger wood-fired oven. This, the Coda range is about $300. Below it is also an Uni. It's a slightly bigger and less portable pizza oven. And you can't really see here, but in the, it does have a chimney on the top of it and it's near the front. This is a wood-fired or charcoal-fired pizza oven. And you can see this picture, smaller picture in the middle of the frame at the bottom shows you the back of the Uni. And this is where you're going to put your wood and your charcoal when you light it. You can also buy a kit to retrofit it to hook it up to gas if you would prefer to do that as well. And these pizza ovens will get to, I think they say like 930 degrees. So they get really hot. To use them, you're going to want to preheat them for 20 minutes to even an hour to really get that stone on the bottom hot and to get the fire going and get it all, bring it up to a hot enough temperature to really cook your pizza. And then last is this is the last pizza oven at the top here in the middle. This is a really nice, more permanent pizza oven, obviously. This one is by Forno Venezia, and it's the Pronto. It retails for about $2,125. The nice thing about this is you can see the opening is a little bit bigger. And with a pizza oven like this, obviously you can cook pizza in it, and it's going to produce a beautiful pizza. But in addition, you can put other items in it. You can, put roast chicken in it. You can do bread in it. You can do a lot of different foods in it. And it's not limited to pizza because of the size of its opening. And it gets somewhere between 950 to 1,000 degrees as well. And it would be a really nice centerpiece in your backyard. It's a beautiful oven. So if you want to make use of something that you already have, your indoor oven or your grill, you can certainly do that as well if you don't want to invest in another piece of equipment for your backyard. So I'll start by talking about how to use your indoor oven to try to replicate the pizza. You're not going to get exactly the same results as you would an outdoor pizza oven. It just isn't going to get as hot. But you can do a couple of things that will help improve your success indoors. And the first is to use a stone or a steel, which is a flat baking dish that you're going to put into your oven and as you preheat the oven. They're going to give you a crisp bottom while still having a chewy inside in the crust. And they will also conduct heat, so they'll speed up the cooking process, which is kind of the goal, to cook it as fast as possible. While it isn't the same as an outdoor oven, it's going to produce a nice pizza, and it's a fraction of the cost of the outdoor ovens. So pizza steels, also known as baking steels, are made from purely steel. Pizza stones are made of clay or ceramic, or and they are they come in different shapes. They're round or square. The most significant difference between a pizza steel or a pizza stone is the way it conducts heat. So steel is just a very effective way at conducting heat. So this means that the heat moves from the steel to the pizza crust much more quickly. And what that means is the crust is going to crisp up and cook faster. In addition, pizza steels retain heat better than pizza stones. So the heat is it's not going to cool down quite as quickly. Pizza stones are good conductors of heat. While they don't transfer heat as quickly, they still can make a really good pizza crust. They just will need a little bit more time to heat up, and the pizza will need a little bit more time in the oven. So the way that they work is that you're going to put your pizza stone or your pizza steel in the cold oven. You don't want to put it in a hot oven. You don't want to shock it, because especially the stones will break. You want to put it in the cold oven, and then you want to preheat your indoor oven to the hottest temperature that you can, whatever that be. It may be 500 degrees, maybe 550. You want to let your oven heat up for at least 20 minutes, but most recipes say an hour, because you really want to get that stone smoking hot, and you want to get your oven just as hot as possible. The minute you open the door to put your pizza in, the temperature is going to drop. So you really want to get as much heat in there as possible. You're going to transfer your uncooked pizza using a pizza peel, which I'll discuss in a minute, right onto the stone or the steel. And then you're going to let the oven do its magic. It'll take about 5 to 7 minutes, and your pizza will be fully cooked. You can purchase a pizza stone a lot of different places. I got mine from Crate and Barrel. It was about $50. There is a company in Orland Park that makes a really nice pizza stone. It's called Fibrament. It comes in both a rectangular or a round size, and those are about $115. Fibrament baking stones are highly recommended because they can retain heat better than a lot of other stones, and they can withstand higher temperatures, up to about 1,000 degrees. In terms of a baking steel, you want to get the original baking steel. Is probably one of the best brands out there. It comes in 2 thicknesses, 3/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch. You want to go with the thicker 3/8 of an inch over the 1/4 of an inch. And those run about $115 as well. The nice thing about pizza stones and pizza steels is that you can use them for other things. So we have cooked naan in our oven just by throwing it directly onto the pizza stone. We've also baked bread on it. The pizza steel you can use on the top of your stove as like a griddle right on top of the burners. So they're a little more versatile, and it gives you a couple of different options. So the last way that you can cook a really pretty dynamite pizza is by using your outdoor grill, whether it be a gas grill or a Weber charcoal grill, kettle, round grill. Kettle Pizza makes 2 different options depending on what type of grill you have that will fit onto the grill, that will kind of try to replicate the wood-fired pizza oven as best as possible. You're going to try to get your fire going and preheat it as put your stone on and get the whole thing set up, and then get the grill preheated for a good amount of time, at least 20 minutes, and then you can put your pizza right onto the pizza stone. What the kettle pizza does is it kind of covers up the space in the grill to create a more condensed, heated area for the pizza. It's really a pretty neat option, and I watched a couple of videos. I've never used this before. I have grilled pizza on my grill, but I haven't used the kettle pizza before. And I watched a couple of videos where people went head to head on whether they liked the uni type pizza oven better or the kettle pizza attachment to their grill. And the kettle pizza won out, especially on the charcoal Weber grill. It gave it a real nice wood-fired flavor. So that's another good option. If you want to go with the kettle pizza, the attachment for the gas grill runs about $225, and the attachment for the charcoal grill runs about $200. The nice thing about these is you're going to get a wood-fired flavor and outcome without buying a whole nother piece of equipment. You're just using the piece that you already have. So that's it with the pizza ovens. I'm going to move into pizza peels and pizza cutters. And so with a really, really hot oven, as I mentioned, you need to have a way to transfer the pizza from your kitchen counter to the oven without burning yourself on a really, a soft, doughy crust. So the pizza peel is the way that you're going to do that. There are three considerations when looking for a pizza peel: the shape, the materials that it's made from, and how long the handle is. In terms of the shape, if you're at a pizzeria, you're going to see that they have a rounded peel. And that is because they've got these great big ovens and they're having to put pizzas in at all different angles, and they really need that rounded peel. At home, probably a better option is a more rectangular peel, because you're just literally putting it straight in the oven and pulling it straight out of the oven. And that's going to give you the best way to do that. So look for a rectangular, squared off pizza peel when looking for one. Probably the most important consideration is what type of material it's made from. They can be made from wood, they can be made from composite materials, or they can be made from metal. Wood peels are the best in terms of preventing the pizza dough from sticking to the peel while you're trying to transfer it into your hot oven. The problem with wood peels is that they are thick. And if you're trying to fit your pizza into one of those little pizza ovens that has a very thin opening, it's not going to work. And the pizza is going to end up, the top of the pizza is going to get taken off by the top of the opening to the pizza oven. So metal is really the best way to go because it's thinner and it's going to be easier to just transfer it into the oven and then pull it out and then put it back in under the pizza, and when the pizza's done, and pull it out of the oven. Even in your home oven, I find that that's the easiest because you have to get it off that pizza stone. So I find it the easiest. So if you're going to go with the metal peel, which I do recommend, you're going to want to put cornmeal or semolina flour or some kind of substance on it that's going to help it slide off a lot easier. I think cornmeal is what they use in a lot of pizzerias. And you just put that on the peel, then you put your dough on top of it, and then it will slide right off onto the stone or into the pizza oven. In addition to the handle length, you want to make sure that the handle length is long enough to reach the back of your pizza oven and still have about 4 or 5 inches from the front of the pizza oven so you don't burn your hand. So you'll want to measure kind of what that space is, and that's how long the pizza peel should be. So I've pictured here in the middle of my slide the uni pizza peel that you can get. It's the perfect length if you're going to be buying one of their pizza ovens, but it's also a really nice peel. One issue with the peels is that with the long handle, they're difficult to store. And so you can find pizza peels that have a folding handle, and that's what I have. It works great, and I can just slide it in my cabinet. So again, mine came from Crate and Barrel, and it was not, I think it was $50 for my pizza stone and pizza peel. They came together. So you can find them a lot of different places, but those are the characteristics that you should look for. And then in terms of the pizza cutter, you get the best cut with a pizza wheel. You want to make sure it's super sharp, and you want to cut your pizza right when it comes out of the oven before it toughens up. If you don't have a sharp pizza wheel, you can use a chef's knife, or they have pizza cutters that are kind of shaped like a half moon. The trick with those, though, is that they have to be as long as your pizza is wide, because you literally want to put the knife in the pizza and then rock it back and forth. You do not want to slice through the pizza because you're going to pull all the toppings with you. So the pizza peel or the pizza wheel is best because it's going to keep your toppings on the pizza, and you're going to be able to eat your pizza when it's nice and hot. OXO makes a pizza cutter that is highly recommended for $15. It's a fine option. And at $15, once it's no longer sharp, you can replace it without taking too much of a hit. So that's my recommendation for that. All right, so let's move into the next big category, which is pasta. And I'm going to talk a little bit about tech to help you roll your pasta, shape your pasta, and also fill your pasta. So my first foray into pasta making was when I was living in Evanston in graduate school, and I was attempting to replicate this really great recipe, dish that I had. It was I can't say this, pappardelle. I had it at a restaurant, but I had nothing to roll out my dough but a wine bottle. So I rolled the dough out with a wine bottle. Needless to say, this is a pasta rolling experience I don't recommend. It did not turn out to my liking. The goal of a pasta roller is to roll sheets of pasta that are thin and delicate and much thinner than you can get with a hand roller or a bottle of wine. In addition, using a roller, most of them come with attachments, so you can cut your sheets of pasta then into different shapes that you desire. With pasta rollers, you can either have a manual one or you can have one that has some power to it. The benefit of a manual roller is that you have more control over the process. You are cranking the roller and determining the speed as you go, and it's kind of a feel. You know when you can go faster, you know when you need to slow down, and if the dough becomes creased for some reason, you can stop and kind of mess with it and then just start rolling again. In addition, the rollers are significantly less expensive than the powered ones. However, the benefit of an automatic roller or a powered roller is that it frees up your hands. So when you're cranking, you've got one hand cranking and the other one catching the pasta dough. With an automatic roller, you can use both hands to really control the pasta as it's coming out in its thin sheets. So what you want to do is start with your pasta dough, typically a ratio of flour and egg or flour and water. You're going to knead it until it's smooth and elastic. You're going to let it rest for about 30 to 60 minutes before rolling. Then you're going to take your dough and gently press it into a small rectangle and begin rolling it on the widest setting several times, and then gradually work your way into a more thin setting, a higher setting, until you get it to the thinness that you're looking for. And then after that, you can begin to think about cutting it. So pasta rollers all work the same, whether it's an automatic roller or a manual roller, that's how it's going to work. What you want to look for is the quality, the versatility, and how easy it is to clean. So in a manual pasta maker, you're going to look for one that it clamps onto your counter. So you're going to look for one that is heavy, that is built heavy, and that has some versatility. So it's going to cut out different shapes of pasta. So you want to make sure that you've got attachments that go with it. And you also want to make sure that the crank is sturdy and that it works fluidly. So in terms of the manual rollers, I'm going to recommend the Mercado Atlas 150. It's the one pictured in this picture. It's a really heavy duty pasta maker. The clamp works really well on the counter. It does not budge. It doesn't move. It has a lot of accessories that you can purchase. It comes, I believe, with a fettuccine cutter and a spaghetti cutter, but it has 12 other attachments that you can purchase separately if there are other shapes that you want to make. It also has a separate motor that you can purchase that will make it more automatic if that's something that you'd like to do down the road. So the manual roller is about $70, and then the motor attachment is about $170. The one thing I'll say is that the motor attachment is a bit clunky. So if you want to go the powered route, then you may want to consider getting an attachment for the KitchenAid mixer. It's a really nice, easy way, if you already have a KitchenAid, to have an automatic motorized pasta roller, and it works really well. You can adjust the speed using the speed lever on the mixer as you would when you're mixing something. The pasta roller for the KitchenAid runs about $200. And you are also able to get pasta cutters in different shapes that will hook onto your KitchenAid as well. I personally enjoy using a manual roller. It's just a really fun process. I will say though, depending on how long the pasta sheets become, I will sometimes call for an extra set of hands, and my husband or daughters will help me out. If I were making fresh pasta for more than 4 or 5 people, I might want to consider the automatic roller, just because it will speed the process up a little bit. But you know, the manual roller and the Mercado is really nice, and I highly recommend it. So rolling the dough to a consistent thinness is only the first part of making pasta. The really fun part comes when you get to shape the dough. And there's so many different shapes of pasta and so many different ways and different implements that you can use to shape the pasta. So I'm not going to be covering all of them tonight, but I'm going to try to highlight the ones that are most used and that you might want to try at home. So as I mentioned before, you can attach a pasta cutter to your roller, whether it be a manual or a powered roller, to cut the fettuccine or some of the longer shapes, long, thin shapes of pasta. You can also fold your dough once you've rolled it out. You put flour on it and fold it, and you can cut wider strips using just a sharp knife or a pasta wheel, which I've got a picture of in the center of this slide, the bottom picture. Excuse me. There are pasta cutters that come with multiple wheels that you can stretch out, and they will be an equidistance apart. They have like pasta rollers with 6 to 12 wheels where you can cut great big swaths of pasta into very precise, neat rows. Those are usually used in restaurants. You can use them at home for sure, but it's not a necessity. You can use a knife, and you can use just a single roller. I recommend finding a pasta, or it's also known as a pastry wheel, that has 2 wheels, as I show in this picture. One that is just a straight wheel, and then one that is fluted. And that will give you more variety of shapes that you can cut. The Norpro Grip Easy Pasta Ravioli wheel is on sale on Amazon for about $10, and it looks about like this. It's got the 2 separate wheels on it. You just flip it around from one to the other. Using the same pasta wheel, you can cut small rectangles, and then you can gently shape them into bow ties if you want to make farfalle, or you can use a gnocchi board like I have in this upper left-hand corner, and take the rectangle of dough and roll it around the rod that comes with it to make garganelli, which is a rolled pasta that has exterior ridges that are going to help hold the sauce. A gnocchi or a garganelli board such as this can be found on Amazon for under $10, and it's a really fun, you can roll gnocchi on it, you can do other things on it as well. You can also take the sheets of pasta that you have rolled and create filled pastas. And the nice thing about doing this at home is that you can create whatever kind of filling that you want. You can season it however you want. You can try different pumpkin filling or butternut squash filling or ricotta fillings, spinach fillings. There are lots of different things that you can do that are, you know, your own. You can make it your own pasta. One is to just simply lay down a sheet of pasta and put spoonfuls of your filling along one side of it, and then fold it up and over, and use a pasta cutter to cut out the shapes. And you can either use the pasta wheel, the ravioli stamps that are in the upper picture above that. You can also put a sheet of pasta down, put your filling in spoonfuls, and then a second sheet of pasta on top. And again, use the same pasta cutter or ravioli stamp to cut out the ravioli. I like using these stamps because they, well, first of all, they come in a lot of sizes, a lot of shapes, but they seal the ravioli as you're stamping them. So they make it really easy to make ravioli with. I recommend, if you're going to get a ravioli stamp, I recommend finding one with a wooden handle and one that has a knob or is rounded at the top so that you can grip it better. And when you're stamping the ravioli, you've got something comfortable hitting the palm of your hand. Mercado, the company that makes $15 a piece on Amazon, and Williams-Sonoma has several varieties as well. And you can pick your shape or your size. And it's just a really fun thing to do on a Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon, is to use a ravioli tray. On the left-hand side or the right-hand side of my slide, this is a picture of the Mercado ravioli tray. It's a very high quality tray. It's about $80. You lay your sheet of press into the indentations, and then you fill it with the filling of your choice. And then you put a second sheet on top and take the rolling pin and roll over the top, and you've got a whole tray of ravioli done in no time. The nice thing about using a ravioli tray is there tends to be less waste of pasta dough. There's a lot of waste. So it's a nice method, and you make quite a bit of ravioli in one time. Some of the pasta rollers have ravioli filler attachments. I don't recommend using them. I personally have never used them, but my understanding is that they tend to produce really thin ravioli lacking a lot of filling. And using one of these other methods, better ravioli with more filling in it. The last piece of pasta equipment that I want to mention is a pasta extruder. The extruders are the machines that are going to create the hollow shaped pastas that are not rolled. They're literally pushed through the end of the extruder. I've never used one of these, so I can't tell you how well they work. I do know that this particular one, this is called the Mercado Atlas Regina. It's a manual. I wouldn't make this my only piece of pasta equipment. It's pretty limited. I would start with the roller if you're interested in making homemade pasta, and play around with that and play around with the different shapes that you can make from the roller. And if you then want to move into more of a penne or a different a hollow tubular shaped pasta, you could for about $100. And again, you need to spend at least $100 in order to get a extruder that's going to be a high enough quality that it's going to last. So lastly, a couple accessories that you'll want to consider having or getting. If you're making a lot of pasta, a drying rack is really helpful. The fresh pasta tends to stick to itself, and you can lay it out on a flat surface and then cover it with flour and put a towel on top of it and kind of create your layers, but it still can kind of stick to itself if you're making a lot of pasta and it's sitting there for a while. Using one of these drying racks, so literally as the pasta comes out of the cutter, you grab it and you're just going to put it straight up on that drying rack, and it's not touching itself then, and it won't get gummed together and create kind of a one big clump that sticks together when you cook it. So using a drying rack is a great way to keep it separated and still have that really great fresh pasta ready to go when you're ready to cook it. You'll want to look for a drying rack that will accommodate enough pasta so that it will serve its purpose for you. This is Mercado drying rack. It's about $50. The nice thing about it is that it will fold up and collapse, and so it's easy to store. And so there are some that are made out of wood dowels that are less expensive than this, but this one, it makes storage really easy, and it's super easy to clean. And then lastly, I've got a picture of a digital scale here. These are really important for pizza and pasta making. Digital scales are going to give you a precise ratio for flour and liquid, and that's what's really key to a good pasta and a good pizza crust. So you're going to want to find a digital scale that will read in both grams, ounces, and milliliters. And you also want to make sure it has a tare button so you can zero it out before adding the next ingredient. So you would put your bowl on it, you would zero it out, you'd add your flour, you would zero it out, and then you'd add your water or your egg until it gets to the right amount. And that way you're certain that you are going to have the right ratio of liquid to flour, which is key to creating the right texture in your pasta and your pizza. So that's a lot. That's everything pasta and pizza. Are there any questions before Mike takes over? Great. Mike?
Okay. Just getting organized here. Can everybody see that? Okay, so let's talk about gelato. We all enjoy a cool treat like ice cream on a hot summer's day, or if you're like me, any time of the year. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Italian take on ice cream called gelato. Both ice cream and gelato are dairy-based, and both are frozen. But is the difference between the two merely semantics? No, actually, there's more to it than that. While the end result is similar, the two products do differ in a few important ways. First of all, ice cream has a much higher fat content at 10 to 25%, while gelato is lower at like 5 or 10%. This is because gelato is more likely to use milk instead of cream. And while ice cream traditionally uses egg yolks, gelato may not. Second, and equally importantly, is air. In order to give ice cream its texture, air is introduced into the mix during the churning process. This incorporated air is called overrun. And the overrun for a cheap ice cream can approach 100%, which means that the amount of air included in the ice cream can almost equal 100% of the volume of the ice cream mix. Premium brands like Ben & Jerry's or other similar brands would be much lower with an overrun of maybe 30%. Gelato is churned at lower speeds than ice cream, so the amount of air that's actually mixed in is lower because of that. And overrun is typically like 15 to 30% in gelato. And this increases the concentration of flavor on the tongue. The final distinction between ice cream and gelato is the serving temperature. Gelato is typically served warmer, and that allows more of the flavor to come through versus ice cream. There are two basic types of home machines. There's the canister type and the compressor type. So the canister models are the ones where you take this empty canister and put it in your freezer overnight to get cold enough to provide the chill to the ice cream as you're churning it. And the results may be a little soft, but if you put the canister with the completed gelato back into the freezer for an hour or two, it will give you a nice firm texture. Compressor models are the ones that are heavy and take up more counter space. They have the advantage of being able to work without 12 hours of planning because you don't have to drop that canister into the freezer before you get started. the refrigeration system in these units cools the mixture down directly without requiring any external cooling. Each of these methods can give you really good gelato results. And the primary difference really between the two would be that it's, unless you have an extra canister, you can't really do back-to-back gelato sessions with a canister model. Whereas with a compressor model, you can just clean out your little brew or churning container and put it right back into use. So let's talk about some specific models. So the first one is the Cuisinart Ice 70, which runs for about $140. It's one of those canister models that we were talking about. And it has an interesting feature, this particular Cuisinart model. When you select gelato as the type of dessert you're making, it actually will churn at a lower speed to incorporate less air. So you can get pretty good results out of this, and it's not that expensive, comparatively speaking. Next up is one by a company called Winter, the ICM 15LS, which costs a little over $200. And this model's been around for a number of years and has often been recommended by professional publications during that time. There are some higher end models from Winter that you could consider that might cost, up to $300 or so, but I like this one because it churns at a slightly slower speed, which might give you better results. And if you're all about the sort of bells and whistles, the Breville Smart Scoop might be the one for you. It costs quite a bit more. It's $500. It has several different hardness settings. There's a special setting for gelato, and it will even sort of give you a chime when it's time for you to mix in your nuts or your chocolate or something like that. So it's got some nice features. Whether it's worth it to spring for that premium is kind of up to you. I think something like the Winter machine or the Cuisinart would be perfectly fine. I've personally got a DeLonghi machine that I bought several years ago that's done well. It's kind of a single purpose gelato machine, not a multi-purpose like a lot of the ones that we have nowadays are, where they'll do ice cream, they'll do sorbet, they'll do gelato. Mine was specifically designed for gelato. So I think you can get really good results without too much work on your part. So you don't necessarily have to go to Freddy's and Cicero to get good gelato. I will give you a few tips on use. The key really to getting a good texture is to make sure that the ice crystals that you have formed during the freezing process are really small. And you accomplish this by getting the mixture down to temperature as quickly as possible. So ways of actually accomplishing this goal, I'm adjusting my screen here. There we go. Are to take your ingredients that you've prepared for your mix and cool that for at least a couple of hours, maybe even overnight. If you have a canister model, of course, you'll want to get that down to a nice cold temperature. Often they recommend doing that overnight too, but it may only take, 8 or 12 hours. If you shake your canister and you can hear things sloshing around on the inside, it's probably not quite cold enough. If you have a compressor model, putting that internal mixing bowl into your refrigerator or freezer for a couple of hours before you get things going will also help to make those ice crystals as small as possible. So, if you're looking for a good gelato recipe, they're all over the place on the internet. You can search all the websites that you're used to searching for on recipes, and you'll find, a whole panoply of recipes from the simple to the complex. Are there any questions about gelato before we move on to coffee? Okay, let's do coffee. So coffee is at the other end of the temperature spectrum. Obviously, we're talking about something hot, and Italy has a really rich history with coffee. We think that coffee probably originated in what is now Yemen, but it quickly spread to other parts of the world like Turkey. And from Turkey, it arrived in Venice in the early 1600s, and it was quickly condemned by local church leaders. But despite that, it thrived and became a really important part of Italian culture. Uh, the enjoyment of coffee, the ceremony of coffee is really important to Italy. And it's not uncommon for an Italian to have 5 or 6 coffees per day. And those would typically come in the form of espresso, which, as you know, is a concentrated sort of creamy form of coffee that's much stronger than American style coffee. So people don't just drink coffee in a to-go cup in Italy. They go to a coffee bar and they stand up at the bar, they'll order their coffee and they'll drink it while chatting with their friends. It's a very communal thing. And then, you know, the whole process takes 5 or 10 minutes to order your coffee at the bar and to get it. It's served quickly. It's very efficient. So this is all very much a part of Italian culture. So for Italians, it's usually enjoyed outside of the home. But like everybody else during this COVID outbreak, they've been forced indoors. And this has really led to an increase in the use of another traditional coffee making method called the Mocha Pot. And I read one article which said that about 70% of homes in Italy have a Mocha Pot, which is, if you don't know, it's a stovetop device that's meant to approximate the output of an espresso machine. Purists will say it's not really espresso, but it really does make a strong cup of unfiltered coffee. And in the next few slides, I'll discuss each of these methods. So let's first talk a little bit about espresso. So as I talked about before, espresso is really synonymous with Italian coffee. But if you'd like to sort of recreate that experience at home, you can. I will caution you, though, that as you go deeper and deeper into the world of home espresso, you'll find your bank account balance will drop precipitously. The nature of the product really makes it difficult to make a high quality product without a pretty sizable investment in money and time. Home espresso making has to really be thought of as a hobby rather than a way to maybe save money over the long run, because it won't really do that, realistically speaking. So the actual espresso process, making process, is really pretty straightforward. In the simplest of terms, hot pressurized water is forced through a puck of coffee grounds over the course of like 30 seconds. And that's really all there is to it. And the amount of that pressurized water, that's measured in terms of bars, where 1 bar is normal atmospheric pressure at sea level. But for standard espresso to create crema, which is that tasty layer of golden foam on top of your espresso shot, you need to brew at 9 bars of pressure. And anything less than 9 bars is not really espresso, according to the purists. For comparison purposes, Mocha Pot, which you make on your stove, as I mentioned before, uses about 1.5 to 2 bars of pressure. So it's not really giving the same force behind the water that goes into the grounds. As you can see in the diagram here, some machines actually have a pressure gauge. So you can actually look at your gauge to make sure you're getting that 9 bars of pressure. Also on this diagram, you'll see the Portafilter, which is this little circular filter that has in this case, a black handle coming off of it. You put your grounds in there, and that's what the pressurized water goes through. And once you've ground the proper amount of coffee and measured it out, you use something called a tamper, which is at the top here on top of the machine. And that will give you a nice consistent thickness and density of your puck. You want everything to be uniform in order to get a good result. So if you're making milk drinks like cappuccino or espresso, which also use a cappuccino or like a latte, you'll use the steam wand to heat up and add texture to your milk. And that's on the right of the machine here. I'd like to talk just a moment about the grind of espresso in terms of grinding your beans to the right consistency. Unfortunately, in order to get an espresso or good results from a grinder for espresso drinks, you have to get a fairly specialized grinder. Your ordinary grinder, if you can look at the little diagram below the espresso machine, it shows that ranging from very coarse to very fine, you have espresso on the very end. And in many cases, these grinders have little tick marks, which designate a little natural resting place. So you can see here that in the standard grinder, there's only a couple of little tick marks for espresso. And that's not really sufficient. In order to sort of get things dialed in just the way you want them, you need to have more control. So an espresso grinder would maybe restrict the range of what you can prepare. You can go maybe from drip to espresso instead of from French press to espresso. And they also typically have some really fine micro adjustments that you can make to your grind. So you can see here that there's 10 or 12 different little tick marks for the espresso setting on this grinder that's suitable for espresso. So what all this means is that espresso grinders are fairly expensive. And that's one of the reasons the hobby is so expensive, is because you have to have a really nice grinder to make it work. So in terms of portafilter, not all portafilters are created equally. And if you're considering an espresso machine to buy for home use, you'll want to take a look and see what they provide you. There are two real varieties of these. There's a pressurized portafilter and an unpressurized portafilter. The pressurized portafilter has a single hole at the bottom of it where the coffee comes out in just a tiny little stream. And by having just a small hole, that allows pressure to build up in the portafilter itself. So in case your machine isn't quite up to the task of getting to 9 bars, this can help mask that by creating pressure within the filter itself. If you have an unpressurized filter, you'll have to have a pretty good setup going, but you can get really excellent results. So pressurized, you get pretty good, consistent results that will cover some flaws and maybe your grind being too coarse. But if you dial in everything just so with a normal unpressurized portafilter, you can get outstanding results. So I'd say that if you're spending less than $500, you're probably going to end up with a pressurized portafilter. Sometimes you can upgrade that to an unpressurized one, but it's a good way for beginners to start using it. So let's talk about some specifics in machines as we go to the next page. Oops. So there are 3 basic types of machines that I'll discuss. There is the manual machine, there's a semi-automatic machine, and a super automatic machine. And when I say manual, I mean manual. You're doing the labor, you're creating the pressure. If you look in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see that there is it's actually 2 machines that are side by side showing the different colors, but that is the espresso machine. So you'll grind out the appropriate amount of beans into the little portafilter. You'll heat up the water, and you'll pour it into that little portafilter, and you'll apply pressure with that lever. And you can get really excellent results from this, even though the machine itself runs at $120, which is a bargain in the espresso world. As I alluded to, though, you're going to need more than just the machine itself. You're going to need to have a grinder. And the very cheapest grinder that I could find that gives good results is this One Zpresso JX Pro, which is about $160. And that's a manual grinder. So you'll have to get up the energy to do that if you're making your morning espresso, to grind for 30 seconds or 45 seconds. That'll get your heart pumping. But you can really get some excellent results with that manual grinder. And plus, as I mentioned, you need a kettle. Most people will use an electric kettle because it comes up to speed really quickly. The Bonavita 1 liter variable temperature kettle is about $65. So all in, for this low-end manual approach, you're looking at about $350. If you step up to a semi-automatic machine, which is what most people who are serious about their espresso will use, the pressure is actually built up by the machine itself. And most of these machines have a steam wand that you can use to make your milk drinks as well. What it's up to you to do is to grind the appropriate amount of beans in an external grinder. You'll fill the portafilter up to the proper level, and you'll tamp it down with your tamper to make a puck, and then you'll press the brew button. So that's a semi-automatic machine. And the one I have mentioned here is the Gaggia Classic Pro semi-automatic. Gaggia has been around for, I think, decades, making coffee machines, and this is a pretty well-regarded one for the entry level. But you'll notice that I've paired it with a grinder that costs almost as much as the machine itself. And I think that's reflective of the fact that the grinder is that important. It's at least as important as the machine you're using to brew it. So this is a Baratza Sete 270 grinder. This is what most people consider is the entry level for a decent espresso grinder. So $400 as an entry level seems kind of expensive, but that is the world that it is. So what if you don't want to mess around with all of that weighing out of beans and tamping it down? You can get a machine that'll do that for you. So the super automatic espresso machines will do that. So the Philips 3200 Latte Go is one of those machines that you can kind of turn on, tell it you want an espresso at this strength, and it'll just do it for you. It'll tamp the puck. It will weigh out exactly what you need. You don't have to fiddle with a lot of settings. So that would be a pretty good example of a semi-automatic machine at the lower end. It's $800. So it's roughly the cost of that semi-automatic plus a good grinder. If you want to take it up another notch, you could get the Breville Oracle Touch Super Automatic. And this is a little, I mean, it has more sophisticated electronics. It'll maintain a temperature more consistently and that sort of thing. So it's definitely a step above the Philips machine. But this one requires that you take that portafilter from kind of the dispensing station and put it into the brewing station. So there's one little, one little thing that you're required to do yourself. Okay, so moving on. Can everybody still see the screen and everything? Okay. Let's talk about Mocha Pot. So this is the kind of coffee that Italians might be drinking at home. They're preparing it themselves. They're drinking it at home. The way Mocha Pot works is, if you can look on the diagram here, the water fill line is in the lower portion of the water chamber. If you can see my cursor, this is the water chamber, this lower portion. And then the middle portion, which is designated by B here, is where the filter, it's kind of like a portafilter, where the grounds go. And then the upper station, which is designated with a C, is where the finished coffee ends up. So the pressure builds up as you heat it in the bottom, and it flows up through the grounds into the top chamber where you serve it immediately. This was created in the 1930s by an Italian gentleman named Alfonso Bialetti. He dubbed his version the Mocha Express. It has this distinctive octagonal shape, and it's really won rave reviews for the timeless design that it has. It really took off in the 1950s, though. There was a marketing campaign where they created a logo that has a little man with a mustache, and I think you can kind of see that on the Mocha Express pot here. That's when it really became popularized in Italy. So as I mentioned before, this is sometimes described as sort of a stovetop espresso machine, but it doesn't hit 9 bars. It only hits a couple bars, but it's a reasonable approximation, and it is really a cost-effective alternative to a true espresso machine. So as I mentioned, you'll use it by filling the water to just below the pressure valve. You'll fill the perforated basket with coffee. You'll put the basket on top of the water chamber, and you'll make sure that your silicone seal there is clear of any coffee debris, because you need a nice tight seal. You'll screw the top down onto the bottom, and you'll heat it over low to medium heat. You don't want to heat too quickly, because it will cause some steam sputtering and undesirable flavors. Once the brewing has stopped and come up to that upper chamber, you'll stop it immediately and serve it right away. So the resulting coffee is about twice as strong as drip coffee and has a somewhat creamier consistency. Some people drink it in its undiluted state, while others will top it off with some water to make sort of an Americano coffee, or maybe mix it with some milk to make a pseudo latte. There are a few tips that I'll mention. The grinder chart that I showed you earlier showed that Mocha Pot grounds are finer than drip, but more coarse than espresso. So it's really best to grind the coffee yourself to get the proper size. But if you'd like to do something off the shelf, you could try the really inexpensive Cafe Bustelo. You've probably seen it at the grocery store. It's like a yellow brick of coffee, and it's $4 or $5 typically. It's really cheap, and it has exactly the right grind size. Incidentally, this Cafe Bustelo is often used in creating Cuban coffee, and there's a whole Cuban coffee culture that's kind of based off of the Mocha Pot, so you can experiment a little bit with that. Some people, when they're brewing Mocha Pot, like to jumpstart the brewing process by starting with hot water and not with cold or room temperature water. And this will decrease the amount of time that the ground beans are in contact with heat. If it's kind of heating up slowly, the beans can scorch a little bit. So sometimes people will start with hot water, not to mention it makes the brewing process go even faster. And the typical brewing process takes about 5 or 6 minutes. One other thing you might try is, as the brewing process is coming to a close, you can kind of tell by the sounds it's making. You can wrap a cold, wet towel around the base to stop the brewing, or some people will even run it under cool water in the sink, and that will keep the very last part of the coffee from coming out. And that last bit can be a little bitter. So by stopping the process, a little bit sooner, you can retain a really nice flavor. So when it comes to choosing a mocha pot, it's really hard to go wrong. They all work roughly the same way. You'll be kind of choosing the materials that it's made from and the size of it. And while we're talking about size, they talk about cups, but as those of us who drink coffee know, the cups that people are talking about when it comes to coffee are not 8-ounce cups. They're something much smaller. And in this case, they're really strange. So if you have a 6-cup mocha pot, it will yield about 9 ounces of double strength coffee. So depending on your needs, you might only need a 3-pot mocha pot, or you might need a 6-cup mocha pot, or maybe an even larger model. They come in a whole slew of sizes. So I've shown just a few options here. The classic one is on the left, the Mocha Express, which is really quite expensive. That classic design, people still think it makes great coffee. If you want something that's in stainless steel, you could get the Bialetti Kitty. So it's the same company, but it's a model that uses steel in the construction rather than aluminum. If you want to go high end, you could get a Cuisinart Roma, which is about $100. So there's a range of prices you could spend. I think something like the traditional Mocha Express or the Bialetti Kitty would be a really good way to go. If you have an induction stove top, you'll need to get one that is stainless. Obviously, it won't work with the aluminum. But gas, electric, induction, ceramic, they all will work with most of these. One other thing about aluminum is don't put it in the dishwasher. It will kind of pit and discolor the finish on the aluminum. So that's one you'll want to hand wash. And really, you don't even need to wash them that much. You probably would get away with doing a nice thorough rinse, and that would be more than sufficient. So are there any questions about Mocha Pot before we move on to Italian kitchen gadgets? Okay, well, let's move on. So I just have 3 gadgets that I'll talk about today. The first is a Mezzaluna. So Mezzaluna is this sort of crescent-shaped chopper that you might use with a normal cutting board, or you could get a specialized cutting board like this one that has a kind of a curved indentation so you can get a nice rocking motion. And that's the key to this kind of chopper. If you're chopping basil or you're chopping oregano or even garlic, it can be kind of a pain with your normal knife, but if you have a nice rocking motion with this Mezzaluna, you can make quick work of whatever things you're trying to chop. Some Mezzalunas even have multiple blades in parallel. So you might have a 3-blade Mezzaluna, which will really work quickly to chop your herbs. The next one that I'll mention is a simple oil dispenser. This would often be used in olive oil in Italian cooking, but you could use any type of oil with it. You could use this type of thing to pour a controlled amount of oil onto like a salad, on top of pasta, or even into your pan if you're about to cook. So the important things to look for with an oil dispenser like this is you have a small spout and a dark glass or ceramic container. The oil will go rancid more quickly if it's exposed to light, and by having a dark container, you can avoid that. I know there are lots of pretty ones in the vinegar and oil sets that are clear glass, but those aren't really great for if you were to leave it out on the counter for your next cooking job. It will have a negative impact on the flavor. And the small pouring spout is good just so for a couple reasons. So less oxygen gets into the bottle, and obviously to make a nice narrow stream of oil so you can get it exactly where you want to. So, you know, these are pretty cheap. So you could keep multiple ones of these around the kitchen. You could have one for avocado oil, one for extra virgin olive oil, one for regular olive oil for cooking. I mean, they're really cheap, and you can even get the kind that are just the stopper, and you could use an old wine bottle. Those are also in the, you know, $5 to $10 price range. So there's not really a great excuse to not have a nice oil dispenser. And the last thing I'll talk about is just a simple garlic press, something that you would use a lot in Italian cooking. And the one that they like at America's Test Kitchen is the Kuhn Recon. They say it performed very well. It's really sturdily built. It's one of those things that you buy once and you'll never have to buy another one. It is pretty expensive at about $45, but if you get a lifetime of use out of it, it's probably worth it. I don't know if any of you have any suggestions for Italian kitchen gadgets that you'd like to share with the group, because I'm sure there are plenty.
Mike, we did have a couple questions.
Okay.
Does the oil dispenser need to be sealed?
Well, in some cases, there's a little flap that covers that very top. Ideally, yeah, it would be nice to have some sort of a strong seal, but I guess the idea is you might use it quickly enough because it only holds like 500 milliliters that small amount of air that gets in through the top is not going to create a problem. But that's a good question.
There's also a couple other questions back to the pizza and pasta section.
Oh, okay, great.
So a question why the pizza peel is called a peel. And I had to Google that while you were talking. And to the best of my ability to find it, it's based off of the French word pelle or pelle, which means shovel. So that's where it originates from. I had another question about which would be better, the $300 Uni pizza oven or the kettle pizza for the grill. And I'm going to say that I think that if it were me, I would opt for the kettle pizza for the grill, especially if you already have a grill. It's just one less thing. And I think that the results for cooking the pizza on the grill are actually better using that kettle pizza than the Uni pizza kitchen. Now, if you went with the higher end pizza kitchen, that's a different story, but that's 10 times the price. So also a comment that one of the participants tonight has heard that those extruders that I was talking about that makes the tubular pasta are difficult to work with. And that's what I read as well. Like I said, I haven't used them before. And I would certainly start with the roller and cutting your pasta. And if you enjoy that, you can delve into the extrusion, but I'm not sure that's where you want to start. And then the Alaskan Ulu knife is very similar to the Mezzaluna. And I'm not familiar with that. Are you, Mike?
No, I haven't ever heard of that. Sounds interesting.
Yeah. So any other questions? Well, we had a lot of fun putting this together, dreaming about going to Italy someday, again, hopefully soon. Hope that you had a nice evening tonight. How do you mix the wood charcoal to cook the pizza? So the way you would do that, if you're going to use one of those Uni stoves and you're going to mix the charcoal and the wood, you're going to start with the charcoal. And you're going to get the fire going that way. And then you're going to add the wood maybe 10 or 20 minutes before you end up cooking the pizza to get the fire going and to get the wood fire in there. But you don't have to, you want to start with the charcoal, if that makes sense. Just do the wood about 20 minutes before. Any other questions? Well, good. Well, we hope to see you all again at a future presentation. Hope everybody has a nice evening and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks for coming,
Good night,
everybody.
everyone.